So welcome everybody to the ISR and CPAS seminar on Resilient Pacific. This is actually our last seminar of the year, and it's been just a really successful seminar series in my perspective. I have enjoyed the talks. So I want to just thank you all for the strong participation throughout the entire academic year, the strong attendance, and also to all of our great speakers. We have a really great speaker today. I'm very excited to introduce Ginger Porter, which I'll do in a minute. Before I do that, I also, given this is our last seminar, really want to thank my CPAS collaborators, Tarek Kabutalaka and James Viernes, as well as with ISR, Aida Arek, who's really made the seminar possible. So they have their videos turned off, but they have all been very instrumental in making this happen. So a big mahalo to them. And also just a few housekeeping items. The reminder that this webinar is recorded. The recording is only of the panelists, but we can see the questions coming in on the Q&A. And we do ask that you use the Q&A function just so we can all see what's coming in one place rather than the chat function. That would be great. And the recording will be made available on the CPAS YouTube channel as well as then posted on the ISR website. So with that, I'd like to introduce Ginger Porter. She manages the Pacific RANET network, which she's going to talk about today. And she's been incredibly busy and instrumental in COVID, spearheading the efforts to get people home back to American Samoa, the American Samoa Repatriation Program. And she just informed me that there's another flight heading back tomorrow, which is incredibly important and exciting. And amongst all of the things that Ginger does, she's also a PhD student in urban and regional planning. So with that, Ginger, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and share my screen.
Ginger, you're a little quiet. I don't know why. In the test you weren't.
Okay, testing. Can you hear me now?
It's very faint, but you weren't earlier, so.
Okay, testing 1, 2, 3. Audio check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That is perfect. We can hear you now.
Okay. And just also checking if you are seeing my presentation in presentation mode.
Yes, it looks great.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kaufman. Thank you, Dr. Viernes, Dr. Tara, and Aida, and the Center for Pacific Island Studies and the Institute for Sustainability and Resilience for this wonderful opportunity for me to share the story about radio and internet, or RANET for short, and to be a part of a series of speakers on the Resilient Pacific. And I offer a hand and greetings to all of you who have joined us today. Talo falava, malo ilile, yakwe hafade, kasalelia rananim, hula, mokathin, lenwo, aloha, and in the many, many, many tongues of the Pacific, hello. I'm, as Dr. Kaufman mentioned, I'm Ginger Porter, and I'm with the University of Hawaii Telecommunications and Social Informatics Research Program. This is formally known as the Pan-Pacific Education and Communication Experiments by Satellite Program. And that's, a term that's more familiar to those who have worked in telecommunications in the Pacific region. Because this morning, as I was finalizing details for this presentation, I was I was fondly reminded by my by my mouse pad here, and at one time this was a thing. Good marketing and giveaways. That 2021 is actually the 50th anniversary of the PSAT program, and so it's a nice reminder of how projects have been sustained over many years, and with people, with collaborations, with networking, and with a solid foundation, these things can last a while. And so it's also very fitting for me, and a truly welcome opportunity to share about RANET, about the network of people, about the technical systems, the process, and the concept, and then reflect on what it's been like. So although PSAT has been around for 50 years, RANET itself has been in place for maybe about 20 of those years. And so this is as I mentioned, this is a welcome opportunity to celebrate a lot of the milestones for this program. And so I start with a story. The story goes, a herdsman in semi-desert region in northern Niger winds his radio, or cranks it, and tunes in to the daily weather report in hopes that it will find him a suitable grazing pasture for his cattle. The program, broadcasted by a community-owned FM radio station in a village some 15 kilometers away, is based on information that is downloaded via a digital satellite radio receiver. The same broadcast also features a request for assistance from another herdsman some miles away who has lost his animals. Later that day, the station broadcasts discussions on COVID-19, on Zika, and other health issues in 4 local languages. The sun is setting, but for a few more hours, the solar-powered transmitter will still be able to broadcast local music, national news, and messages from migrants who have moved to the city, and their children who have moved away from the village to schools, to loved ones back home in the village. Some 15,000 kilometers away, about 9,000 miles, a storm is brewing in the Northwest Pacific Islands. A radio operator in Guam gets on his satellite radio and starts to broadcast alerts and warnings and weather and marine advisories and updates on a frequency dedicated for communications in the region out to remote island communities, to fishing villages, to the chiefs that a storm is coming. These messages from Guam are received via a radio receiver and rebroadcasted to local communities via local radio, or simply by word of mouth, or with a local warning system, such as the beating of drums or the beating of oxygen tanks. So, and then part of these transmissions include not just weather information, but national news and reports for fishing vessels and boats. And so these scenarios, the stories of the herdsmen from Africa, then traveling to the story in the Pacific of sending out weather alerts, these scenarios are the goal of RANET. So RANET is rural communications using radio and the internet. And that is to make weather, climate, and related information accessible to communities in the remotest areas in the region. RANET is first a network of people. RANET started in Africa as was mentioned. And that was following an experience at seasonal outlook forums. And these forums are, where all the technical minds go, where the meteorologists, the hydrologists, the scientists, the disaster managers, they gather to forecast based on the best available data, what weather and climate outlooks would be like for that season. They take data, they analyze to determine the frequency of weather events. So for example, how many storms, how many hurricanes are we expecting in the region? How many hurricanes are we expecting in Hawaii, for example? And so they analyze that type of information, the impacts and weather and hazards of weather and climate variations for that period, and then they ship it out, send it out, disseminate it to different, to people, to organizations, to the public. And so, it was recognized in a forum such as that the benefits of all the advances in science and all the advances in the applications of the technologies, the modernizations of your telecommunications and all the broadband infrastructure that's improved could only be realized if populations outside of the central cities or outside of our main islands could be reached. Right? And so the group, this network of people, this RANET network of people sought ideas to move forward, to make information, weather and environmental information more accessible and useful to our resource poor populations in order to aid day-to-day decisions and to prepare for natural hazards. In addition, it was also to improve the dissemination of information, right? So that was the kind of the goals of these efforts, this network of people. Understandably, the Pacific has been one region with many data gaps and in many different areas, and weather and climate is no different. So RANET, it also operates in the principle that good data anywhere makes good science everywhere. So, and that leads to better and more informed decisions. And so realizing that there is a need to fill the data gaps, the RANET set out to address these as well. And so this meant involving local communities in the process from planning to implementation. And so that whole span of, the planning, the assessments, the vulnerabilities, implementation includes data gathering, the analysis of it, the training, the interpretation, and dissemination, and most importantly, the feedback. And so, so that's RANET as a network of people. RANET is also a process. So we had these wonderful ideas, right? This goal that we wanted to, get the information out to the herdsmen in Northern Africa so he can, know where to lead his cattle. So in the beginning, there was a quote that said, "Tell me where it rained and I will know what to do." And that's in reference that if this herdsman knows exactly where it rains, that means there's water there. And so he will know where to lead the cattle and to be fed. So, knowing all of those things, and we needed to create a process for this. So from the network of people, now that's RANET, and now we have RANET as a process. And then that process includes packaging up all this information that we need to deliver to the end users, to that last mile. So how do we get all this technical information, this weather alerts, these the radio station from Guam to Woolley, right, to the fisherman in Woolley that needs to know if he should be going out fishing or not. So, the process, the technical process looks something like this. So information from various information producers, from the weather offices, from the news, from the radio stations are packaged up and made compatible with satellite broadcasts. And those are sent up via an internet link to a satellite uplink station. And then it will be picked up nearly every hour by an uplink station, and that send the upload information to the satellite that is broadcasted over the Pacific region. And so, RANET has been around since 2003 in the Pacific. It's been in Africa since the late 1990s, so 1998, 1999. So there's also been a transition of many satellites, and we're talking about the satellites that's actually out in space. So RANET depends on those satellite systems be able to broadcast the information out to very, very remote islands. And some of these systems, they can be public communication satellites, they can be commercial satellites. Whoever can take our information, we gladly give it to them for rebroadcasting. And so there are satellites that, for example, the National Weather Service has a GO-17 satellite. That's where we are now from. This is a series of satellites over many, many years. The Japanese have a series of satellites called the Himawari. So, and then many others, the Iridium family of satellites. So many other different satellites. And so whoever is able to take our information and rebroadcast it, those are the different organizations we gladly, work with. And so from that satellite, it is then downloaded to by digital radio systems or devices that are hooked up to computers. And then they are downloaded by local agencies, local weather offices that can then use the information, translate them into local languages, or contextualize the information to what fits the community. And then from there, they push it out, and they push it out on a FM radio station or telephone or internet. And as always, by default, the word of mouth works just as fine. So that was the whole process. So I had introduced RANET as a network of people, the network of experts. Then we had RANET as the process. RANET is also a family of technical systems. So we had the idea of how we had the goal of getting information out to people. Then we said, okay, how do we do that? That's the process. Right? And so we defined the process. And then now we're getting into the technical systems. So there are many different systems that are part of the radio and internet family of systems, but I'll highlight three of them: the Emergency Managers Weather Information Network, the Chatty Beetles, and the One Talk FM radio station. The Emergency Managers Weather Information Network, or we call it MWin, is a wireless priority-driven computer weather data broadcast system. So if you take a look at the images on the right, so on the bottom is a typical MWin setup, and that's in Puerto Rico Airport Meteorological Office, or the weather office in Tarawa, and that's in Kiribati. And then up on top, I think that's the Cook Islands. And that's if you just look at it, we're broadcasting the same information, just now, newer devices, right? But the information that goes on these are still the same. And so the purpose of the MWin system and what it drives out are warnings, forecasts, graphics, imagery, and other information that assists weather offices and disaster managers to be able to formulate their localized weather products, and then they can issue their warnings or advisories or just forecast of local weather in that area. So there are many different islands in the region that do not have the modernized the fiber optics that we so enjoy in other areas. And so this is it. This is for them. This is how they will get the information. It's via satellite. And it's not it's not a cheap, so the technology itself has, of course, the prices over time have reduced, but it is the satellite link that is the majority of the cost, right? That's the hefty price that countries have to pay. So looking at the MWin system and the deployment over the last, almost 20 years. So we have systems all over the region that stretches from, south all the way up to the north. And this focuses on there's American Samoa there, but a lot of the MWin systems are focused on non-Pacific Island countries. So there's 30 of these that have been deployed and updated. So there's an upgrade that has been done to upgrade the system. So looking back at this, you see the monitor on the bottom, old LCD type setup, and the computer to a more modernized, screens and computers. So those things have happened over time. And so, the MWin has been operational for many, many years. And also the satellite systems that provide the information is through the National Weather Service. And so last year, or 2019, was when the United States launched the GO-17. And so that's how information through MWin has been broadcasted. The next RANET system I wanted to share about was the One Talk community of FM radio station. And this is a, just like when you get in your car, turn it on and tune into FM, an FM station. So very much same idea. And this is then created by the community. This is really owned by the community and created for the community. And readily, it accepts different file sources, but mostly audio sources. And the One Talk network, FM radio, focuses on education and training programs. And it does include disaster information like alerts and responses, but the network focuses on education and training and getting information out to end users. And take a look at, so unfortunately, there's one station left, and that is in Niue. But this was all over Melanesia. This was one of, many stations that was deployed over time. And so right now we have one working FM station out in Niue. And the third RANET system is called the Chatty Beetle. And the Chatty Beetle is a two-way text messaging system. It's based on a family of satellites called Iridium. It serves the same function as your phone, just designed as how you see in the picture, because it's made for rough terrains and remote communities. And this was a tool used primarily for the collection of meteorological observation data, surf inundation observations, and it deployed out to the region. And then be able to get information back from your remote Pacific Islands back to the weather stations. So today, as of today, we have over 90, actually it's over 100 Chatty Beetles that have been deployed out through the whole Pacific Islands. And in 2019, we also deployed a few Chatty Beetles out in Asia region, and Mozambique and Africa. So lots of need. There's a need for this type of technology to be had. And so if you take a look at those pictures on the right side, so that's in Tonga at the airport in Nuku'alofa, and our colleagues in Fiji on the bottom right. So this system is everywhere. And this has been one of those systems that have gone through many generations of developments, and taking every time there's an improvement, it is because the users have said, oh, maybe this function should be added. This works more for us versus this. And so it really is a collaborative process when these technologies are being remade and being rebuilt. And so this is also then I think it's a really, really, good project. If there is a student out there who would like to participate or be a part of the development of the next generation of Chatty Beetles, which we are currently working on right now. So, feel free to let us know, and you can join the team in developing and designing some of these systems. And so they've been out there since 2003. And so the lifeline of the generations of Chatty Beetles that have been out there. So there's been 2 that have been deployed. And then we are gearing up for the generation 3. And so this is, a text messaging system. So with a keyboard and an uplink, and it links to the satellite, directly to the satellite. So if I'm sending a message from the unit, that's the terminal that's here in my office, and I send it to Tonga, or I send it to Fiji, then send it to the Solomon Islands and so forth. So we can communicate that way, and then back and forth. So these are really, really developing tools. This started out as a demonstration project for RANET, but the need for it has been, tremendous for the region. And so the sustainability too, and the funding has been there to support these projects. So, we talked about RANET as a network of people, RANET as a family of technical systems, RANET as a process. But RANET is also, a concept for resilience. And all the development and all the conversations and how we ended up doing these projects for the region, it was all done in collaboration with people and with the communities, with the technical communities, the cultural communities, the villagers, the chiefs in those places. It wasn't just, here's an idea, and this is from the meteorological community or the disaster managers, and let's go and just do it on our own. No, it was a collaboration over different groups in different sectors. So, I think that's key. So if you think about the 50 years of operation for the PSAT program, and then the RANET program has been around for 20 years, it comes back to the community and accepting this, the use of it. So the concept, accepting the technology to be a part of their daily lives, acceptance of the concept of RANET, and then just, even the usability of it has been crucial to be a part of this whole, the success of it, I should say. And we took a cultural approach. We approached the leaders. We approached, we approached the community versus like, this is what donors want. This is what we're going to be doing for your community. So the community was part of the planning process. They were part of the assessments. They were part of the training. And so they ended up training themselves. So that's those are some of the core principles when RANET was being formalized. And the RANET also works to build upon and augment existing networks and means of communication. So what is familiar to the community. And so when we introduce different communications, the modalities of it, the different systems, it's what the community has accepted, right, in the first place to begin our conversation. So, and so just looking overall, we took an adaptive approach to building or to formulating these systems and the concepts, from listening, right? The key, listening to what the region needs, listening to the experts, listening to the community. I highlight that, and then also highlighting the need for the technical information to be understood and to be useful to the community, and how do we communicate the technical language. We saw the RANET, this network of people saw that the information being pushed out was too technical. Nobody understood it. So there needed to be a change in that culture. And so that was one of the big changes. So adaptive approach that had to be done. Then there's the importance of partnerships, the importance of the resources already, who's doing what in the region and how can we work together? So partnerships and resources. The importance of contextualizing the technical information. So not just translating data to information, but now contextualizing that information that it makes sense to us in my village out in the remote, island in the Pacific. And then the involvement of the community in the process. So the assessments, the planning, and the whole implementation as well. So that's the kind of adaptive approach that the RANET project took over time. Then, there were also some key innovations that came out of RANET over the years, that this is a hub to convene multi-stakeholders groups to address communications related challenges. That was it was a forum, right? It's a forum to be able to bring in ideas. It's a forum to be able to bring in the needs and to address the gaps. So that's the other power of the RANET network. The other key innovations is the focus on community engagement, the engaging of the cultural leaders and the policymakers all alike, and then also the technical minds. So from the users to the funders to the ones who are going to be created to the implementers, right? So, but the project took the focus on the engagement, the collaborative engagement as part of, one of its core principles. And then these are grassroots ideas, right? So the modifications of the Chatty Beetles, the kinds of messages that need to go out onto the MWin, or the kinds of broadcasts that should be on the FM radio station, those are generated from the public, from the communities, and those address a need in the community. And then the sustainability of the network. So just the timing itself, right? Looking at 20 years in the making and where we are today. This is, yes, funding is a challenge, but it's not as challenging as the need to find people who will be able to support this network. And so those are, some of the things that we think about through as we were working on this project. But RANET is not without challenges. There's been many challenges in trying to put this network of people, network of systems, this process and this concept together. And like most community projects, they're complex problems, right? So there's many different actors, many different perspectives, and so it has over time, now not so much now, but it's been a messy process, right? There's so much struggles. There's the technical knowledge struggles, there's the community struggles, there's the power struggles. So a lot of those things that have happened over time when we were developing the RANET framework. So it's not immune to challenges. It's been great over the years, but it's also been messy. And yeah. But we continue to collaborate, right? Because we believe in this network, and it addresses a need and it addresses a gap. And so, looking at the collaborative processes and then the different phases, this was actually shared from another presentation that I did together with Micah Fisher and Dolores Foley, but the ideas and the concepts are very, very much the same about the different phases of the collaborative process, and exactly very similar to what we had gone through as part of the RANET process. So the problem setting, what was it that we were trying to address? The direction setting. So now we have where we want to be. Now, what are all the resources that we need? Where do we want to be? And then the implementation. So dealing with externalities, dealing with the different funding demands, the donor demands, and the needs of the community. So just looking at the different phases of the collaborative process. And strategies of working together. So networking, coordinating, cooperating, and collaborating. Networking, exchange of information for the mutual benefits, coordinating, exchanging of information, and altering activities for the mutual benefits, and to achieve this goal of getting information out to people. Because that was really the goal of RANET, right? The network is, how do you get technical information, that the technical data now translated to information that useful to people, and then how do you get it to the people, and not just the people in your immediate cities or islands or the main islands, but out to the people that are in your remote communities. Cooperating, exchanging of information, sharing of resources, and collaborating, the exchange of information, and enhancing each other's capacity for mutual benefits, and to achieve a common purpose by sharing risks, responsibilities, and rewards. And so I actually end with this, that we in the Pacific are not just users and receivers of content, but we are also contributors. We are information publishers. We are content creators. And we contribute to better science, better technology, better models that help sustain not just the global village, but our local community. And so I thank you all for the opportunity to be here today. And I turn it back to McKenna.
Thank you, Ginger, for the great talk. We already have some questions coming in, which is good. So I'll remind the audience, please type your questions into the Q&A function. And I'm going to kick off with the question of who packages the information so that it's contextually appropriate and in local languages? How is that?
Oh, that's a great question. So, depending on if it is weather information, for example, for the MWin network. So that is packaged by the National Weather Service. So we have a dedicated team of people who packages the data. And all of these are before we even get to that point, the format of it and a template that we create is sent out to the end users. And the end users then say, okay, yes, really, really, let's say in the Pacific, this is what I need. I don't need all this other data that you have here. I just want this to be sent to me and in my broadcast. So that's how the data packaging works.
Great. I actually have a similar kind of follow-up question to that, Ginger. Can you talk about kind of just your perceptions or any anecdotes that you have to share about the way in which RANET and this communication structure has sort of improved lives on an everyday basis? And another question I have is, which was related to the prior one, is it ever used, in terms of And can you describe a little bit more about how the collaborative process leads to content development, right? If is it ever used sort of more as an open forum for discussion or information sharing?
Oh, yes, thank you. I'll start with, just sharing some examples, right, of how RANET has been used, like on a daily basis, right? So, the Republic of the Marshall Islands actually is a champion in this. So right now, they have about 20 units that have been deployed out to throughout the whole RMI. And every 6 hours, right, they submit data from, or, we've also, all right, so we've also created a format, like a coding system, right, of how, because these are mostly numbers and you're limited to 150 characters, right? So long, big sentences, it's like shorthand, right? So created a language that can be easily used to send and receive information. And then I can look at it and say, oh yeah, he's talking about, I know what this number, this stands for, and so forth. But that's, they've sent, data in that form of numbers, like their temperatures, their rainfalls, all those things. They send it via text to the main office, and that's packaged up by the Madrigal Weather Service in the main office, and that is inputted into a bigger system that creates the bigger models, the bigger weather models for the Pacific. And so that feeds into this data gap in the region. So this continuous, the need for accurate data. So now you have these systems that are out there, which before it was either, okay, you get on the radio and you're trying to listen, right? So you're trying to, sometimes it's so much interference in the frequency that it's just, you're not able to say, oh, was that a 2 or a 3? So these types of things. So it also contributes to the accuracy of the models, the accuracy of the data that's being transmitted. So sorry, I lost the other question that you had.
So sorry, just do you have sort of, that's a great anecdote of RMI and how it's used. If you have any others, that would be, I think, great to sort of make it really tangible for people to see how this is being operationalized.
Yes.
And,
so, okay, go ahead.
No, I'll stop.
Okay, so I have other ones. So, in Tonga, there was a fiber break, right? So most Pacific Islands modernized their telecommunications network and have, submarine fibers that have gone into their islands. A couple of years ago, there was a break in that fiber in Tonga, and their backup was not working as well. And so the telecom guys actually was using, the Chatty Beetle system to communicate to the outer islands to say, okay, do this, because then you can, it's a texting system, right? So this is how we would be able to communicate with you, or get on your cell phone, get on this, so it's really an alert system in that sense. And so the Chatty Beetle was created to be a tsunami alert warning system, to just get the message to the person out in the village to go turn on your radio. So it's an alarm. And so, but it's become more than that. For many of these islands, that is their primary form of communications to get any kind of information out to the region. So.
Yeah, and that actually starts to answer what was my long second part of the question, sorry. And that was really like, to what extent do these sort of networks of collaborations that you've developed over this time span, how do they lead into sort of determining the kind of content and uses, right? And as you described, it was like initially the Chatty Beetle, which I really like that name, by the way, was initially used for the purpose of tsunami warning, but has become a lot more than that. So how does that evolution tend to take place and kind of brokered within the network?
Mhm. Yeah, so that's actually a really, really, it's a growing thing, right? So ideas are proposed from the countries because they are the ones who are using it, right? So they find a need. Well, when there is a need that comes up, not just for weather and operational data, not just for texting, but it is a tool for communications. So as much as you can use it for any other purpose, we do encourage that as part of the network. So from here at the University of Hawaii, we do the regional check-ins, but that's to make sure that things are functional. But that's also an opportunity to we have over 100 units that are out there in the world. And then you see the communications between different islands as well, right? Just even a hello. So it becomes a social, a thing of a social tool, right? For communication. So, all the messages, and I will say all the messages I can see on my side. So even the the non appropriate in the sense that, oh, I'm inviting you to a party here, at the president's house, or so. I was like, it's okay, but the point is, it's a form of communication. It's a tool for communications, right? To get the message out to people. So that's been the most that the system has been used for. But those are key things, because without RANET right now, there's no means of communicating those data sets, those information out to the region. And so one of the initial use of it was, how do we build the rainfall data, right? So the farmers in Africa needed to know, or needed to get the rainfall data into the main offices, and that was the only way to do it. So otherwise, you'd be traveling for days just to pick up a piece of paper from those remote farmers.
Thanks, Ginger. There's another question in the Q&A. Well, there's also a question about resources going to be shared. And just the answer is yes. So we'll have the webinar posted on the CEPAS YouTube channel, as well as then linked to the ISR website. So that will be shared out soon. And the question for you, Ginger, is, can you talk a bit about collaborations with community radio stations in the Pacific?
So outside of the network that was built, like the FM, like the One Talk radio station that I mentioned, that outside of that, it's we do not, right? We don't have any, just for the radio stations themselves. This is like a dedicated network for the remote islands. But if you're talking about, okay, like somewhere in Guam, like a main station in Guam, what we can do is we can package up some information from those radio stations and then rebroadcast them into this network, of this RANET network. So that's a model, and that has been done, but it's not a direct from an FM station on Guam to an FM station to in Majuro or somewhere like that. So that's the extent of what I do.
Great, we have another question. Since different islands have different infrastructure, how have you handled the challenge of managing the different types of equipment? What equipment has been most reliable for the most remote islands that lack reliable satellite and electricity?
That's a great question. So we do try, so first the equipment question. So we try to standardize on what we put out into the region. Yes, it's been challenging when different countries come in and say, this is what we're going to be putting out. And that, that's always going to be the challenge. We do try to take a different approach with that, from the governance structure, from the political perspective, try to sync our efforts, because we're serving the same community. So standardizing of equipment is crucial in that. Yes, knowing that the footprints of all the different satellites do not cover the whole Pacific. So we do what we can, right, into getting the information to the points where the footprint does reach. And so then the message is then localized to other areas by their local broadcast systems. It might be like a point to point type of thing. So what I can see is where it's going to be able to send, right? So then it's down to that kind of technology that's being used. But we have a team who we try to send out. The problem also with the team is we are looking for people who are interested in in working in this field and learning this technology. That's been a challenge for us over the years. So our team, they are seasoned, very just in old age. And so we do need to transition to the next pool of technical people who are going to be able to support this. And this is really a work of love. Because when you are going to go out, when you are deployed to the region, you're out there for months, right? Because you're hopping island to island. Trips out to the islands can take 30 days at a time to reach one island. But it is, something that we do face, and we are challenged with the lack of the workforce to support this.
In our last few minutes, I was hoping to change topics a little bit, just because your sort of idea of getting people back to islands, your work has been so important and integral within the American Samoa Repatriation Program. And I'm just hoping you can comment a little bit on what that effort took in coordination and how you got it started.
So thank you. So that's, the repatriation program is really a community effort, right? It's not one organization, it's not one person, but it really is, it took a whole bunch of stakeholders to be able to move a project like that. And so just quickly, it's been, since COVID, American Samoa closed its borders last year, and it's been over a year, and people have not been able to go home. And there's, I think, maybe to date, maybe over 2,000 plus people who, been stranded out of the island. So the effort is very, very much needed to go back home. And so, from a planning perspective, it was a fantastic community planning project, and taking everything from the initial stages of it, right, and to be able to implement a project with stakeholders, getting all the planning pieces together, it was a great model, I can tell you for sure. And then be able to duplicate that, right? Now that they have the first flight, the second flight, the third flight, and then future flights as well. So the foundation is there now, the framework of it. And so, that's been a great experience for me, and so for the team as well. So, yeah.
That's great. Well, it sounds like you could have a portion of your dissertation on that now. Probably.
Yes.
No, but what an amazing experience, and just how important. And one question I had was, were you working on repatriation efforts focused on Hawaii, but also or also from around the world back to American Samoa?
It's focused on American Samoa. So this was part of the CDC Foundation. So they had funded the positions to be able to support the repatriation efforts. And so that's how that came about. But also the whole framework of it, right? The repatriation efforts was also based on community, community inclusion, right? So, and creating a sense of community while you're in quarantine, because it's tough. It's tough mentally on anybody to be able to be in there and stuck and not be able to leave for, it really is it's a whole month actually, because you're quarantined here for 14 days, up to 14 days, and then you're going to go back home and quarantine for up to 14 days as well. I mean, that was those were the parameters that we were using to plan this for. And so the whole push was, the inclusion of risk, the concepts, right? Concepts of risk communications, concepts of the inclusivity and people-centric approach. So that if you participate in your own health, in your own, so that, and then you are better informed, given the information, you can participate in that, and it doesn't stress you out as much, right? So just being informed and giving people assurances. So that was a big component of the whole repatriation effort. So.
Well, thank you, Ginger. I really want to thank you for being our anchor speaker to the whole seminar series. That was a really great talk. So yeah, just mahalo and keep up the amazing work. And I really want to thank our audience, and to those of you who have joined throughout the year to make this a really successful seminar series. I really enjoyed engaging with our speakers, but also with the questions. And we've sort of pivoted to this online webinar world, and it's been a learning experience. But I've found it have gone really well, and I've learned a lot personally. So. Tara, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if I want to give you the opportunity for any last words to close out our seminar series. Sorry, you don't have to. I'm also putting you on the spot. Okay, I'm going to take that as too much on the spot. But just really thank you, everybody. And with that, I think we will come to a close, Ginger. Mahalo.
Thank you. Bye.